In this video, we'll look at our improved approach to a radio-controlled needle valve for our endurance airplane.
The OS-15LA engine has an unsophisticated carburetor that allows the fuel-air mixture to go very rich when throttling down.
For a successful attempt at an endurance record, you must reduce the throttle throughout the flight and keep the mixture as lean as possible so as not to waste fuel.
Recall that the Perry needle valve is way too sensitive, and a conventional servo arm doesn't have enough throw for the stock needle valve. Also, a regular servo doesn't have enough power to drive a 1 to 7 geared mechanism. The solution came in the form of a robot servo. A robot servo is a special servo that allows continuous variable speed rotation in both directions, with the neutral position being off. We bought some plastic control arms and gears compatible with CA glue. Gluing the gear to the control arm was the easiest way to attach a pinion to a servo. The extra length of control arm was dremeled off. The large gear from a model race car was attached to a servo arm, and a number 2 screw was put through the middle, allowing the big gear to be attached to the needle valve with the extension hole and set screw. With the servo and engine in a test mount, we could see that this would work, but the construction was at best a proof of concept. The servo was way too big and heavy, weighing over 1.5 ounces, and the big gear wobbled in both profile and plan view.
A salesperson at Great Hobbies suggested I look to servocity.com for possible solutions.
We ordered a selection of gears and spline mount pinions from Servo City and chose the 48-pitch 100-tooth gear for the needle valve. The hub was almost the right fit, but just a bit too small. We mounted the needle valve in a drill press and heated it with a heat gun. We could then press the needle valve into the gear, melting some spline grooves as we went. The result was a perfectly centered and squared attachment of the needle valve to the gear. The press fit was very good, but for added security we drilled a hole in the hub and replaced the needle valve set screw with a regular 3mm retaining screw. Look how nicely the gear turns without wobble.
An 1.5 ounce overweight servo can cost you 10 minutes in an endurance airplane. Servo City didn't have a solution, so we had to look elsewhere.
We purchased a regular high-tech servo at half the weight and modified it for continuous rotation. Unfortunately, servos modified in this way have no deadband surrounding their neutral setting. They can be made to rotate in both directions, but getting them to stop consistently is unreliable. This one couldn't even be trimmed to stop. This is unacceptable because we can't tolerate any uncommanded movement of the needle valve. We found pololu.com online. They sell Fetech servos, now called Fetech. They have a continuous rotation robot servo that only weighs 0.3 ounces, which is perfect. Unfortunately, servo manufacturers have this stupid practice of making their splines incompatible. The spline mount pinions we bought from Servo City fit high-tech servos, not Fetech.
We could not find any pinions or even CA-compatible servo arms for the Fetech servo, so how can we mount a pinion?
Our solution was to drill a hole in 1/16 plywood and mount it directly to the servo wheel that came with the servo. The mounting was straightforward, and I dremeled off the screws more or less flush. After marking, scrolling, dremeling, and sanding, the plywood was round. Since plywood is CA compatible, the 11-tooth pinion we got from a servo gear set can be glued to it, but first it must be fitted and positioned. The pinion must be checked for wobble and centering and repositioned as necessary. This is difficult because the original servo wheel does not seat well on the servo spline. When it's as good as it can be, the pinion is glued to the plywood. A test of the geared operation shows a good connection between the servo and the needle valve. Fine control is achieved by pulsing the transmitter control, which moves the needle valve by very small amounts. This is thanks to the 9:1 gear ratio.
The part I really don't like is the pinion attachment.
It looks really kludgy to me and perhaps heavier than necessary. I'm hoping my friend Juan will custom make a spline mount pinion for this servo using his 3D printer.
In case the deadband neutral setting of the servo drifts, and to help with pulsating the transmitter control, I wanted some immediate visual feedback that the servo is in motion.
The idea is to attach red and green LEDs to the wingtip to indicate forward or reverse rotation of the servo. This would be driven by wires directly connected to the servo motor. A standard lightweight 12-inch servo extension was selected. It was cut at one end and the extra wire and pins were removed. Soldering is always a 5-hand job and I never have more than 2. I really hate doing it. I carved out some room for the new wire and screwed the bottom back on. The 3-wire male connector goes to the receiver and the 2-wire female connector goes to the LEDs on the wingtip. I soldered up some super bright LEDs with a resistor to test with the servo. It works great on the bench. Low speed on the servo delivers 2 volts to the LEDs and high speed delivers 4. You can see the difference in brightness. Performance outdoors was not so good. We found we had to shade the LEDs from direct sunlight in order to see them from 52 feet. The solution is to mount the LEDs under the wing about 1 rib back from the wingtip in front of a black fin. We used this box to simulate the LED mounting. If necessary, we can install small black tubes over LEDs for additional shade.
I think the Bumblebee has served its purpose. Let's get started designing a new endurance plane.